Today on Locked On Red Wings, the Carolina Hurricanes do what the Carolina Hurricanes do, and they stop any offensive, at least good offensive opportunities for the Detroit Red Wings as they blank Detroit 1-0 in a very, very boring hockey game.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I am a podcast producer for the Daily J. I helped out with the episode that went out today, which would be Tuesday. We talk about the minimum wage fight in Michigan. And then Scotty is freelance journalist for the Detroit News, as well as host over at Locked On Tigers. Oh, fun fact. I didn't even tell you this, Scotty. I was also on Locked On NHL for Wednesday's episode. Ross of Locked On Sens reached out to me and asked me if I could fill in. So listen to Locked On NHL. You're hearing my voice, whether or not you like that or hate that. So have fun with that.
They always got a good product, though, regardless. Yeah, that's a fun
especially when I'm on.
It's always a good product regardless.
Especially when I'm on, Scotty, right?
It's a good listen every day of the week.
Okay. All right. Anyways, it's a better listen than what the Red Wings had you watch on Tuesday night as they got blanked 1-0 by the Carolina Hurricanes. And there's a couple different places we could start. I mean, I feel as if
you want to start with Larkin or you want to end with Larkin.
I feel one like of those two. Start with Larkin just because that's the burning question, right?
Yeah.
I know you told me before we started recording that Larkin would not be in tomorrow's game. As soon as the game ended, I had to go to my own hockey game. We won, by the way, for anyone who cares. I played okay. I was very conservative because my shoulder's still not 100%. I wasn't like shooting the puck or anything, just playing defensive defenseman, you know. Trying to emulate my idol. But
so ridiculous.
It was with Larkin, man. That's just a huge blow. And if he's out long term, we have to have a serious conversation, and we can kind of preview that conversation now about how we adjust our expectations for this team. You legitimately lose half of your top six, and then with the rest of your injuries and players out right now, I mean, we already were eviscerated with depth, and you lose three of your best top six forwards in Vrana, who's out who knows how long, Bertuzzi, who's going to be not coming back till probably after the new year. Hopefully he'll be back to normal, and then Larkin. I mean, it's still up in the air, but if he's out long term, man, we got to adjust those expectations, right?
I mean, just like what a brutal night, just a brutal hockey game, and like the offense just had nothing going for them, like no legitimate threats at any point. And your captain, he gets slashed, and then he blocks a shot with one hand, then goes to the room, comes back out for the second period, then blocks a shot with the other hand and goes out and doesn't return. Just what like a brutal hockey. You get shut out by a rookie and your captain gets hurt. Awesome, dude. Awesome.
Block shots to the wrist, man. I don't know what the deal is.
It just keeps happening, man. It just so like obviously we have no idea. At the time of this recording, all that's confirmed is that he's not playing against Minnesota. That is all we know for a fact. So we'll see what happens. I'd imagine that I don't know. I guess they just say tomorrow that like they'll get asked a million times about updates on Larkin. So maybe they just say it tomorrow, or maybe they get through tomorrow, maybe fly him back to Detroit. And then on the off days you have between tomorrow and Saturday, maybe then that's when you get like a real diagnosis on how, in a real timetable on how long he's going to be out. But regardless, yeah, I think that is, I don't know. I feel like we should almost save that for like when, like if that's announced, we should save that, and that can be like a segment or two segments like on an off day show, because like that's a $1 million question.
That would be good for Thursday because that's following the Red Wings. Well, Thursday's recording for Friday, rather. So it'd be Friday's episode, just because that's, like you said, the $1 million question. But I mean, you talk about the injuries, Scotty, that the Red Wings have had so far.
Oh,
You
no.
obviously Jacob Vrana's out. Phil Zadina's been out, and this is regardless of what your guys' feelings towards these individual players are, is their depth nonetheless. Vrana, Zadina, Pysyk, Bertuzzi, Fabry, who's on his way back, Oli Mata, who's been out with an illness, Robert Haig, undisclosed, was placed on the injured reserve. And then you also, this doesn't even include Matt Luff on this list as well. Now possibly Dylan Larkin. I might be missing somebody because there's just been so many. And like, listen, the team signed a lot of new players like Robert Haig, Mark Pysyk is an everyday player for the Red Wings if he's healthy, but like Robert Haig's a depth player. Matt Luff is a depth player. But when your starters get hurt and then your depth gets hurt, all these depth players that you signed to try and prevent this type of thing from happening, or if it did, you'll be okay. Like your call-ups are hurt and then your starters are hurt. It affects you on the ice. And not to use that as an excuse as to why the Red Wings lost today, but it did have an effect. It's
You didn't have your captain for an entire period.
And
like,
you didn't have
have
arguably your first or second best. You didn't have either of your first or second best left wingers because you're missing both Vrana and Tyler Bertuzzi. That's left winger 1 and 2. You're missing Philip Zadina,
I mean, yeah, depending on what side you put Fabry on, that you could say 3. It's just we're really going through it right now,
and
man.
I know Carolina's banged up too, so I don't want to use that too much
For sure.
as an excuse.
No. This game was just a defensive masterclass, and we'll get into that for sure. But I mean, it definitely, you played an entire third of the game without your captain and your best offensive weapon. I mean. It really was brutal, and like we can get to the actual game itself and whatnot, because the injuries we've talked about already this week, and now it's only getting worse. So I'm sure we'll talk about it again on off days. But this truly was an amazing defensive performance, and the shot totals are somewhat deceiving in the sense that like they were pretty even, and like the Wings didn't end with 12 shots on net or anything like that, but the opportunities they had were unbelievably like low threats and just like low danger. I mean, I can count maybe on both hands, like just count the amount of times the Wings just like flung the puck at the net just to like get a shot on net and just see if they could go for a rebound or squeak something by somebody or go for a redirect or something. There was a lot of just uncompetitive just shots on net that were just nothing, and that's because this defense is unbelievable. We knew it was unbelievable, and yeah, we saw it firsthand. That was, and like we had plenty of shooting ourselves in the foot, but I mean, credit where credit is due. That was a masterclass of a defensive performance.
That's exactly it. Everything we talked about in yesterday's episode about what Carolina did is exactly why they won this hockey game. They absolutely were, like you said, defensive masterclass. They snuffed out any offensive opportunity they have. There was a lot of unforced turnovers on the Red Wings side. And then, of course, we talked about how they were 25th in total goals scored. They only had 1 goal in this game. So it's like everything
Did you see like the zone entry by the Wings this game?
There was none.
Holy cow. Like vomit inducing. I mean, my goodness, dude. It was one thing to see it 5-on-5. You're like, all right, this is a really good defense. Clearly, this is, kind of like what they do. We were on the power play and we couldn't end. There was a solid minute of, I think it was the second power play of the game we had. There was a solid 60 seconds where we could not enter the zone on the power play. Like it didn't matter, man. This team was very much in control. I think that's the way to put it. The Hurricanes were very much in control of the game, the entire game, even though it was only a 1-goal difference.
I mean, what's crazy is you look at the basic stats, the stats you get on the stat sheet at the end of the game. If you're like, what's your face? What just happened?
Sorry, Carlos Correa just signed with the Giants for a 13-year, $350 million deal. Baseball, sorry, it just happened right now. Sorry.
That's a big deal. But you look at the score sheet, Red Wings even in shots, 27, led with hits 16-13, won the face-off draws 30-29, close. Power play opportunities, they had 3, Hurricanes had 2, and of course their 1 goal came off that power play. Blocked shots, they had the edge 15-11, tied takeaways. The problem is then what ultimately cost you this game is those turnovers, the giveaways. I mean, that's what killed you. And I want to talk about that in the next segment when we come back on Locked On Red Wings. But first, I got to talk to you guys today about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, when we talk about what cost the Red Wings this game, and we talk about what the Carolina Hurricanes had, obviously a big role because of the way they play defense, but you didn't help yourselves by having giveaways. You look at the one goal that occurred in this game, it was because Ben Sherratt tried to get a little bit too fancy behind his own net and make a play to Moritz Seider, and it forced a turnover. Puck came out in the slot, and admittedly, it was a very weak call. That slash that they called on Adam Ernie was very weak. But it was called nonetheless. It was a slash nonetheless. They went on the power play and they converted, and it was a beautiful no-look behind the back pass through the crease right on the tape. And that was all she wrote. And the Red Wings out-turned over the puck, which is not a stat you want to have the lead in, 12-4 in this game with 12 giveaways. And, you know, a lot of that, again, is credit to Carolina's defense. They played in a very oppressive defensive style, especially on the Red Wings power play. The Red Wings power play couldn't get anything started because Carolina was very aggressive on the penalty kill, something that we praised the Red Wings for early on in the season. Carolina did. They came right at you and they suffocated. You had an extra man out there on your power play and you couldn't find him. Carolina just cut down every passing lane. And that led to giveaways because people would get frustrated and try to force passes. So, I mean, man, Carolina just...
There was also, and I didn't see it as much in the second and third period, to the Wings' credit, but in the first period, dog, like, I mean, they were just doing like boneheaded stuff out there, man. Like it was really bad passes and just turnovers, like miscommunication type turnovers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't just insane, you know, like, oh, that's a unbelievable play by the defense. There's nothing you can do about it. Like, no, it was just like terrible miscommunications. And I don't know if that was just like to start the game and they got out of it. I mean, they got shut out. So like, I don't know, you know, whatever. I don't know how much we're celebrating here that they didn't see in the second and third as much, but like, I mean, to start off the game, like you had a puck in the corner that I forget even who it was, but two of like the Wings players were just like staring at each other and then like let the puck go in the corner and then like both backed off because they thought the other one was going to get it. And then there was one where I think it was Perron was trying to give an outlet pass like on a rush, and it ended up just like no one was going back on the rush, and then you just gave Carolina a breakaway like instead. I mean, there was a really bad turnover at the beginning of the game in our own zone that led to a puck off the crossbar like right at the beginning of the game. I mean, like it honestly, like I tweeted this out. I think it should have been like 3-0 at the first intermission. Like, I mean, it was a really, really sloppy period. And again, while the second and third period weren't nearly as sloppy, they didn't necessarily get themselves like out of the rut either. Like I said, the best way to really describe this in my eyes is like Carolina was very much just in control. And at no point did it ever feel like the Wings were really in the game, even though they were only down a goal.
Well, and get this, and the game did not match. Like you look at what you see advanced analytic wise, and it almost doesn't match what we saw. The Red Wings had an expected goals for percentage of 26% in the first period, 84% in the second, and 12% in the third. Because again, they struggle in the third period getting anything going in general. But you know, that's
Larkin
funny. Is I watched that second period, and it didn't feel like they had an expected goals. They had an expected goals for in that period of 1.04 and expected goals against of 0.19. So that shows that they dominated the second period, but watching the second, it didn't feel that way. Yeah, they had a possession a lot of the time, but it didn't feel like they really ever got it. And that's an even strength. That doesn't count the power plays they had, because I think they had 3 power plays. One was cut short at the end because of a Kubalik penalty, but it didn't feel like they had that many scoring opportunities. And maybe I was just down bad, because Larkin got hurt. He came back and played most of the second, but I was still like kind of nervous. So maybe I just was ignoring it. But Corsi 4 percentage, 69%. So they outshot attempted. Nice. The other team, it's just 12 shots to 4 in the second period. Second period, the Red Wings dominated, but yet it didn't feel like it was a domination. Of course, the first and third were the other way around. It was all Carolina, but it's a weird game. You look at individual players. Obviously, Larkin's near the top. He always is. Perron's near the top. I mean, these guys had expected goals for percentages of a Larkin. Larkin had 71. Perron had 70. Austin Czarnik with 54. Number one, though, and this is a guy who continues to impress, Scotty. Jonathan Bergen was your best player on the team at even strength with an expected goals for percentage of 82.21. And that's not because his expected goals for was high, which it was in terms of on his own team, it was fairly high, but his expected goals against in this game was 0.1. He had the best expected goals against out of anyone on the team. And that's something that I've critiqued Bergeron for, is I thought that at the NHL level, his defense wasn't up to snuff yet, but he had a great defensive game in this one. And I mean, it shows obviously in every single metric. It's tough to weed out the silver linings in what was a snooze fest of a loss. But I mean, if you're looking for Bergen has continued to be a silver lining. And when you think about it, grand scheme, what was the one thing we asked out of the Detroit Red Wings coming into this game? Play tough, play close.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they played necessarily
I was
tough.
like, where are you going with this? I was like, did I put like an ultimatum out there?
We just asked for them to play close. And I don't think they've necessarily played tough, but a 1-0 loss. I mean, that's silver linings. I don't want to take moral victory in this kind of game, but
yeah, I mean, again, like they got shots on net, I guess, but like, I don't know. If you take away like the super uncompetitive shots on net, I think this game looks even more lopsided. And like, again, they did some of the stuff that we talked about. Like they won in the faceoff circle, which was nice to see. They really sacrificed their bodies almost to a fault. And yeah, it's just that is a I mean, again, a masterclass defensive performance that the Wings were not able to overcome. And really, they had an opportunity to tie it at the very, very end of the game. Like that puck jumps over, was it Veleno's stick?
I think it was Rasmussen.
Yeah, you're right. Right at the end of the game when he's right in front of the net, and just like you see the replay, it literally just hops right over the blade, man. Like that. What are you gonna do?
Well, I mean, there was one silver lining in this game, and that was the goaltending in general between both teams. Ville Husso again was great. 1 goal allowed on the power play, of course, and 27 shots against. Goal saved above expected.
Man, that was a brutal penalty kill on that shift as well, man. They just forgot about a dude on the ice. Like they thought it was 4-on-4. Yeah, they thought it was 4-on-4 there for a little bit. He was on an island with miles of water in between him and anybody else, man. That was really tough.
It was tough. But goaltending was great. Ville Husso was fantastic. Cooch for the Carolina Hurricanes was really good too. I'm just gonna call him that because I'm not gonna attempt to pronounce his name. He had goals saved above expected of 1.98. He played great, and he ties Ville Husso for the most shutouts in the league now. His second straight shutout, I believe. So
yeah, you believe they had to really drive home the fact that he's the first rookie in Canes history to have back-to-back shutouts. They really wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that stat.
In their long 25 years of existence in the National Hockey League, well, our Red Wings are approaching 100. But I digress.
It's fine.
It's fine. Going forward, Scotty, and we'll talk about this in segment 3. It's a back-to-back. Red Wings historically very good on back-to-backs, and this gives us an opportunity to ask the question of who are we seeing in net tomorrow? So we'll get to that and more on the other side of this on Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, before I move on to the final game, what am I saying? The next game, the game against the Minnesota Wild, is there anything you want to say or touch on to wrap up with the Carolina Hurricanes?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything else we really need to talk about in that game.
I agree.
Yeah, you just got outclassed. That's all there really is to it.
Oh, yeah. So the Detroit Red Wings tonight by the time you're listening to this, are going to be playing the Minnesota Wild in Minnesota. I love back-to-backs, especially when one's home, one's on the road. Just fantastic. Love to see NHL scheduling, things like that. But the Red Wings, historically this season, have been doing very good on the second half of those back-to-backs, winning most of those games. And you're playing the Minnesota Wild, who you've already beaten. Last time you beat them 2-1 at home. So this is the second and final matchup against that team this season. My question is this, Scotty. The Minnesota Wild team that is 12th in the league at 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage. They're at 52%. Who are you throwing in net in this game? Would you stick with Ville Husso, who's hot, or do you see one of your two backup goaltenders?
It's a great question, ain't it?
We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, I would say if there was ever an opportunity to put not Ville Husso in that, this would obviously be the one, right? Second game of a back-to-back. Which backup you go to is a phenomenal question. I still don't think that you put 3 goalies on your roster unless you have the intention to play 3 goalies, especially with how much Ned has been struggling to start off the season. However, if Ned was thrown in yet, I'm not like jaw on the floor shocked either.
Yeah, this is one of those tough ones, honestly, and we don't sell short the idea of running it back with Husso either. They've
Of
done
course.
that. They've done that, and he's shown that he's up to the task, and he's been fantastic. So they may very well just go right back to Husso. But this is as good of a time as ever to throw one of your backups in there. And honestly, Scotty, I got to go with Magnus. I mean, I said it yesterday, but Hellberg, it doesn't have quite the track record that Nedeljkovic has in the NHL, like as just in terms of quantity of NHL games. But he's played one NHL game this season. He was good in it for the Ottawa Senators. He on his conditioning stint with the Grand Rapids Griffins, he proved that he was not an AHL level goalie. He's at least a fringe NHL goaltender. He's proved that in my eyes. You got to give him a shot. I mean, Ned hasn't been giving you the opportunity. So give Magnus Hellberg the chance. And I mean, this is it, man. I don't know any other situation you have the opportunity to do this with your goaltender other than on the second half of back-to-back.
So I agree with you. And
Good.
we talked about it. Was that yesterday's episode?
It was.
We talked about, yeah. So, and I said, I was like, the situation should be, if Magnus was ever going to play, why else would you call him up right now of all times if you weren't going to play him at the first opportunity that was available? And this is the first opportunity that is available. This is a back-to-back. I think if they were ever going to do it, this would be the time to do it.
Well, they had to call Magnus back up because he wasn't technically with the Griffins. He was on a conditioning stint, so he could only spend a max of 14 days down there. So he had to come back up. Otherwise, he had to go through waivers.
Right. I meant more of the claim in the first place more than anything. Like
okay.
The re-addition of him is more what I was talking about. But yes, like this is like you are making a conscious decision now to carry 3 goalies on your roster, and I don't understand why. And like you have another injury, so like if Larkin does, like knock on wood, he doesn't have to, but if he does go on the injured list, like then you're gonna have to call somebody else back up, and then you're like still gonna be making a conscious decision every day to carry 3 goalies on your roster. And I don't think you do that just for like fun. I think you do that with intent. And this is the first opportunity since being recalled, obviously, that opportunity is here. And I think that it's not ridiculous to think that we might see him in net. Some great pads, hopefully.
Oh, no, he's rocking the pads he had last year.
Oh, okay.
They have pictures from him in practice.
They'll be sick.
Let's talk about the Minnesota Wild themselves, the team that he may have to face in that.
Yeah.
I kind of teased it there at the beginning. They're 12th in the league at expected goals for percentage. If you want to go simpler than that and go to Corsi 4, just pure shot attempts per game at even strength, they're 15th in the league, almost dead center, but still above 50%. So on average, They out-shoot attempt their opponent. Not surprising considering who they have on their offense, but they're not the crazy good Minnesota. This is a beatable team. Obviously, you've already beat them once. And on the second half of back-to-back, which you're historically good at, I think this is as good of a game as any to try and right the ship, bounce back, a get-right game, as we used to like to call it.
The get-right game.
It's tough. It's tough with just the injuries in general to ever predict a win. It's hard to right now be like, this is a game you should win, especially because Minnesota Wild are, they're fourth in division like you are, but
they're heavy favorites.
Yes, they're heavy favorites for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's tough to predict. I know their power play and their power play is one of the best in the league, top 10. Their penalty kill is middle of the pack. They are on paper a better team than you. I mean, Kirill Kaprizov so far this season has like 30 points already, maybe more than that. Let me check. It's loading right now. 35 points in 28 games played. Zuccarello's got 28 and 20 or 29 and 28. Joel Eriksson Ek has got 23 and 28, and their goaltending's been decent too, but not from the perspective you would expect. Marc-Andre Fleury's having a down year. He's got 19 games played, but an .895 save percentage. Philip Gustafsson, who I believe you saw in that first matchup between the two teams, has a .920 save percentage in 10 games played. So, out of the two, you almost want to go with the multi-Vezina winning, multi-Stanley Cup winning goaltender. You almost want to see him more because of his recent struggles, rather than the young guy in Philip Gustafsson, just because he's hot right now. He's playing better hockey. But by no means, while this is not as good of a team as the Carolina Hurricanes, they're still a really good hockey team, and they're better than you on paper, especially without all the injuries that the Red Wings have, or with all the injuries that the Red Wings have. So it's getting to a point, Scotty, where I'm having trouble seeing a path forward other than just saying you gotta just play. You gotta have guys you wouldn't expect step up, and you gotta play flawless hockey, and that's not something they've shown you they can do in this last 3-game losing streak.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that you will desperately need to figure out for this game, just real quick back to Carolina, that was legitimately one of the worst, I guess is the word, power play performances I think we've seen from this team this season. I mean, that was brutal, like we talked about earlier. And I'm pretty sure Minnesota leads the NHL in PIMs a game. It's 32nd if you were to bad leads. Has some of the most PIMs a game in the entire league. So you're talking about a team that is going to give you opportunities on special teams. Take advantage.
Yeah. And that's something that this season has been kind of hit or miss. They go on hot stretches and they score a lot of power play goals.
Where they score 3 power play goals in a game, and then they won't score on the power play for a week, and the percentage won't look absolutely terrible.
They're currently right now, their power play has dipped down into the 20s. Their penalty kill as well, I believe. Penalty kill coming into the game was okay. Well, they went from 14 to 16. Their penalty kill remains right where I want them to be, middle of the pack as a step forward. Power play is synced down to 22.
Power plays outside of the bottom 10, which again, I know the short-sighted part of you wants to be like, oh, I really want that to be better or whatever. But we have to remember where this power play has been for the last 3 years and just realize that just not being a bottom 10 unit in hockey is honestly a pretty big accomplishment in a 1-year span.
I mean, right now, the only thing I can say with confidence about this Detroit Red Wings team is, man, I don't think I can say anything with confidence. Husso's going to play well if he plays. That's it.
Yeah,
because
that's pretty much it.
Your big playmakers are all out. I mean, like I said, you're missing half of your top 6. Maybe more so, depending on who you consider your top 6. You have a bunch of depth players who are hurt. No, Joe Veleno, God bless him. No offense to him, but he shouldn't be playing top 6 center role. That's not where he's at now. Maybe in the future he can develop into that 2C role, but that's not where he's at right now. And that's what we saw him have to do at the end of last season. At the end of last season, man, when the team was falling apart and was brutal, Joe Veleno had to do that because of injury. I don't want to see that at this point in the season. I know injuries happen, but it's just so tough to be optimistic. And I hate this. I hate that I'm talking like this. I'm so sorry to all our listeners who are listening, and I sound like a bummer right now. But it's so hard to be optimistic about this team's outlook during a tough stretch of the schedule when all your best players are hurt. And then beyond that, a bunch of your depth players are hurt. I mean, and Andrew Kopp not being what he should be, what we signed him to be. Like, let's call a spade a spade. He's been underperforming for sure. And he's being 3C. The fact that Andrew Kopp didn't
Prorate
get,
his point total.
no thanks. The
Yeah,
fact that
I'm just saying, yes, you expected more out of him defensively and in the face-off circle, but like
it's not even
points-wise,
just
like
that.
it's pretty much is what you signed up for.
The point I'm trying to make though is how demoralizing is it that when Dylan Larkin goes down, the guy who gets the call up to the line number 1 as center isn't Andrew Kopp, the guy you're paying $5 million a
Correct.
year.
I
It's Joe
wholeheartedly agree
Veleno,
with that.
who's a sophomore.
For sure.
Like, good for Joe Veleno, but that's not how it should be. So I don't
Yeah,
know. I
agree.
sound like such a bummer. And I'm really sorry, guys. But we're in a tough stretch right now, and injuries
People
have
keep
not.
getting hit in the wrists, and
Yeah.
they need to stop.
Until the team gets healthy and until the team starts
Give me
playing.
some new
good.
wrist padding. Give me some
They talked
new,
about that in the
like
broadcast.
upper hand wrist padding for the league.
This is another one of my gripes with the league, and I'm a minority in the opinion, but I get so tired of NHL athletes pushing back against added protection that will let them play the game more and stay healthier longer just because they want to look cool. It's one of my biggest gripes, and I know I'm in the minority, and it goes back to the whole visor thing, but I will save that for an off day when we're really desperate for topics. Scotty, any final thoughts, dude? What's the over under? Let's say 6.5.
We nailed the under in this one, by the way.
I feel like the under is the safe bet in every single game.
I'll say the over.
That's a shot. You're shooting for the moon there. I'm saying under.
Yeah, I know that under's like the safe bet given everything we just talked about, but I don't know. Hockey's weird.
I hate injuries.
Yeah,
I'm tired of it.
They're really demoralizing. Is like the
this
biggest
was supposed
thing,
to be, and it still is.
Wind out the sail.
They're still wind out of the sails. Absolutely, they're still on pace to be where I want them to be. But how are they going to maintain that pace when everybody's hurt?
Right. Yeah, it's tough.
We ball though. Hey, nice.
Hey, my God.
Dead air. We'll be back tomorrow with a game recap. Let's hope for a good result. We will stay optimistic on that and hope for a good result against the Minnesota Wild. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.